So at the beginning of the idea, before it was even called One Kilburn, is that Sushin organised a series of walks around Kilburn, and rather than trying to take it all in sort of a couple of hours of one visit, is that there were a series of walks that went to particular parts of Kilburn, and in fact there was pre-arrangements made that people who were in community groups or community centres along that walk were invited to sort of speak to the group who was walking around. Maybe some of them would join us and continue to other places. And although it just seemed an idea of people who didn't know Kilburn, who had come to work to get to know it, it somehow also brought together the people who were active in various groups, because what effectively happened is, as you walk, you walk and talk with different groups of people. So there's not one conversation happening. I think that really formed a very strong basis for the network that One Kilburn became. I'm David Kay, and live on a house that backs onto this cemetery for the last 50 years. For me, it was really that you wanted to have a facility something that enabled different groups at different times to evolve. So I was trying to establish something that would, in the long term, enable things to be developed rather than a specific problem.
I've been involved with One Kilburn from the beginning. So One Kilburn was initiated by Camden and Brent after many attempts at organising all the communities and organisations and individuals and businesses that had potentially an interest on Kilburn.
I am the communities manager at the Kiln Theatre. And my involvement with One Kilburn has been that the Kiln has been like one of the organisations involved from the start, so part of setting up One Kilburn. I guess like we kind of, I mean, we're not the only ones, but we're one of the organisations that bring like an advocacy for the arts perspective. And a lot of my job here at Kiln is about translating priorities of communities, residents, businesses to the Kiln so that they can respond with their programming and activity. It's work and it's like a personal passion. Mm.
For me as a councillor, I'm seeing residents that I've never seen, and you know, learning about issues that I should know about, but I didn't know about before.
16 years, in fact, I was Kilburn ward councillor on the Brent side, and we've had 2 Kilburn wards on the Brent side and then the Camden side of Kilburn High Road, and a lot of very active local people who had very strong drive to improve Kilburn and to raise the profile of Kilburn. So for One Kilburn, I think you could say it's fair to say it grew out of the Kilburn Neighbourhood Forum. So these people came together and it's about planning for Kilburn at large.
How does that work? It's chaos. No, it's not chaos. Yeah, there isn't leadership. I think what's quite good is that there's kind of like an understanding from most people who are part of the organisation. Are we an organisation? I think we are. Who are part of One Kilburn, that like there's a kind of a group of members who, because of maybe their experience or their profession or their like knowledge, we kind of like in good faith put some trust in these people to kind of steer things. Again, it's not leadership and it's very informal, and those people, whoever they are, but you know what I mean, are really good at hearing every side of things, and they are very diplomatic thoughtful.
I teach at Middlesex University, and my expertise is in adaptive reuse. So my first involvement in everything at the very beginning was actually with the community centre, the 107, that has been unused and closed for a long time. And I thought, that's a pity. and that's the sort of work I do with my students, to try to reactivate unused spaces and building, involving the community and trying to find projects that do respond to collective needs and dreams as well. I guess in general, what I do in my professional life and my private life, it's being interested in politics and people, like politics in everyday politics and people, and of course space. It's how I sort of filter my thinking.
We had a sort of a public meeting, and then we had a big inauguration at the kiln, and it was gone. And there's obviously a lot of appetite for it in Kilburn, because the attendance at the open meetings is pretty good. There's usually about 50 or 60 people there, I think. And I think about half of them are residents, And
every time I sit in one of these meetings, there is always somebody that tells something that I'm really struck off. I mean, it's something really interesting that I've never thought of.
As an area is relatively unusual in that it splits across 3 different London boroughs, which makes things more difficult, because from the point of view of developing relationships with local authorities, you need to develop relationships with 3 local authorities rather than just one. Like all voluntary organisations, it often takes a long time to actually even get a simple decision, because we want to be open, we want to consult everybody, we want to be democratic.
If One Kilburn wants to become capable of being independent financially, we can start by testing its ability as a funding manager, as a fund manager. I got involved specifically in the funding groups and in the kind of groups that is developing ideas about the governance, because this is what I'm particularly interested in as a researcher. How can we think about One Kilburn as more than just an alliance? Can it become something more solid? And funding is a crucial component of that narrative.
One Kilburn is a work in progress, and ultimately we would hope that it would be a funding organisation. I mean, it doesn't have that structure at the moment. It's not even constituted. But we were kind of looking for a project to coalesce around. And so we decided that the way to do it would be to run a little grant process.
So reaching right into the community, so that people in the community to say what they want to do, what's missing, what they would like to develop. So getting that focus on people who've not always had the opportunity was, I think, the sort of the driving force in setting up the SUNS subgroup.
It's people that just came together really for a shared interest in enhancing things and making whatever we have here more open and available for everyone.
It was really as part of this work on organisation and governance that I became involved in the process to identify and select and award a series of community-led projects funded by Camden Council.
The idea was really popular because it was bringing money, resources, opportunities into the community. But then how would we make sure that it did not reach the same old, but people who had ideas hadn't necessarily had the chance to develop them?
The real aim of the fund, as we designed it, was to really make everyone think they could develop an idea and get support. Then, with the fund, of course, also a little bit of economical support. But economical support, it's not just what you need. You need much more, I think. But the whole idea was really to try to engage as many people as possible to make sure that they thought they could do it, even if they felt they didn't have the skills or the knowledge to develop things in a way that was readable and that was acknowledgeable, and it was a completed project.
As few rules as possible, and a very easy application process, etc., etc., etc.
We were asking specifically for projects that were focused on Kilburn. So the idea was to fund projects which would each be worth between £5,000 and £10,000.
And it's sort of trying to enable something to come out that you haven't even thought that you needed.
I was involved in the selection process by the reading of all the applications, and then also like the meetings where the applications were read and discussed and shortlisted.
It's about a dozen or so that were shortlisted.
It was very successful. Got a lot of applications. I read them all, yeah.
We had no idea of what sort of response we'd get. And my view was, well, there's only a limit to the number of projects that we're going to get from an area which, the population of Kilburn, depending on how you define Kilburn, it's 30 to 40,000 people. And I think we were all very, very pleasantly surprised when we ended up with 23 proposals.
I think that was a very successful part of it, with people being brought in and putting forward projects. And I mean, which I think astounded everybody, the breadth of groups that came forward, and some that didn't meet its criteria, but again, there was something done to try to point them in the right direction, I think.
The most exciting time was just past Christmas when we met to look at what we had received in terms of project, and we were together and looking at the diversity and also the sadness of having to exclude some because they might not have met all the criteria. The time that we spend there thinking about how can we fund this project that we cannot fund now, how can we support these other projects. So to see in front of our eyes this wide range of projects that were all potentially successful, to see how rich was the creativity in Kilburn, that was amazing. To me, that was the biggest achievement to have been in a position to have been part of a project that triggered so much creativity. It was an amazing catalogue of creativity and aspiration and professionalism everywhere.
What was my role? I guess just there was a group of us, and there was kind of an equal sense of role, but like just bringing like your eye in that group, so like your experience. Maybe for me it would be like an awareness of like arts and cultural stuff in the area, but yeah, equally like just bringing whatever your kind of specialism is and looking at it through like that kind of lens. And we'd happened to have worked with Electronic Sheep like previously through in another project, so that was really nice. So we obviously, when that application came through and we discussed its potential, I was able to like contribute that. I thought it was amazing and that they were great organisation, they made great work, but yeah, also I think like I kind of saw my role in that selection process as like advocating for projects that I think maybe like need closer inspection and maybe more support, revisiting applications and making sure that everyone has understood like what the potential of a project really is, even though it's brand new and it might not be from an established organisation or a partner or have a building that they work in or be a charity, but actually that there's a real like need in our community for something like that. That's kind of, does that make sense?
Yeah, so most of the projects were centred on art and culture and education, and even the ones we were not were connected to. So for example, the Kilburn Oasis project was focused on a real sustainability problem that we've got globally, but of course we've got in Kilburn as well. But again, it was education and art were included in the project. This huge response it kind of demonstrate, the importance of art and culture, and that actually becomes one of the primary elements because it's the one that is able to sort of connect everyone together. It's the easiest way to make sure that people engage with each other and discover new things, and it's a sort of a soft, I think, way to make sure that people get, for example, that they do get awareness of really important things and global challenges, because what One Kilburn, what Kilburn Oasis is talking about, it's global challenges, that then are localized in a very specific place in Kilburn. So yes, that's one of the many reasons why art and culture needs to be at the core. And I think a lot of these projects were about raising awareness and communicating.
There's a lot of thinking around value for money. How much value do you get for the money that the local authority pays? But I think a project like this, the value is in its existence, is in its making. For me, it's not so much specifically about one project, although I know they Healing Choir more, which is a project around using choir techniques and singing as a way to connect with each other and experiment, experiment with perceptions about your own body, your own self, in the context of other or in the presence of other. But these are projects that are essentially designed to connect communities and to empower individuals within through this connection. Originally, there was a bid with a pot of money and the idea that the community would be able to set the parameters for which project they wanted.
What was very innovative was that we agreed at the outset that the funding decision would be taken on the basis of a vote of local residents. And the votes took place both online and in person. The voting process was run over several weeks. The applicants behind the proposals were also allowed to promote their own applications. They helped with the publicity effort, in a sense, even though they were doing it from the perspective of trying to garner votes for their proposals.
Well, actually, we got a lot more votes than we expected in first place. So when, on the closing day was like, wow, it worked, But then because we had so many votes and we could see the distribution of the votes, of course, we said, well, actually, I think this needs to be redeveloped. And in the first place, we wanted to go back to everyone else. Well, first to give them, congratulating and give them a feedback of what they've done, because, just by itself. And then also add another layer of support or mentorship to try to see that project that wasn't successful in this funding, if you could have find another way to find, and then more funding came along. So that was an easier way to do it.
I was involved mainly in the initial project that secured the funding, so Kilburn in Motion.
It was actually about making a film with quite heavy community involvement. So that cinematographic proposal was the one that won the highest number of votes. About 3-4 months down the line, after the award was made, additional money was made available to Camden Council, and we simply selected the projects which had the next highest levels of votes. So we just went down the list of preferences. There aren't very many cases of community projects such as this being awarded through public votes. So we'd like to think that we've set perhaps a little bit of a precedent, maybe.
We obviously know that one of the things about that process is that everybody applying for funding is going to have a different level of application towards the process, depending on resources, support, experience.
It's a big barrier for a lot of people that have huge ideas to make this idea be seen as something that is worth investing in.
New and evolving groups probably needed a bit more protection.
The mentoring, I think, was one of the main interesting things in the One Kilburn Fund, but it was part of the project itself. So it's not something that came about afterwards.
Okay, you need to address certain criteria, but we will actually help you to do this. We will offer you some mentoring. We will put you in touch with organizations that have more experience in running projects. We organize a series of open meetings where people who were behind the proposals could come and ask questions.
Like, you know, if we see potential in a project that's really important for a specific community, they should be entitled to mentorship. That means that they can really do their best version of their project.
So it might be financial expertise needed, or just the community group or the community project have an organisation behind it.
We provided people with different options to see us online, offline, and one-to-one or little groups, whatever they thought it would have worked better for them. And the whole point of that was, even if you don't get fund this time, even if you don't get fund for this project, you've got a clear understanding, and more than an understanding, you've got now kind of a confidence to maybe think that this is something you can develop, next time for another fund, for another opportunity.
And who chose the mentors then for each
That was
project?
volunteers from One Kilburn open meeting.
As a community funding group, we thought that this was really important, that we couldn't just do something to give funding to organizations that already were established. So we wanted as much as possible to support individuals or organizations or small projects that were not. There's all the intentions to do another one and to grow it. The success of the community fund is that it happened. It went all the way to the end. It's also that those who were involved in working together around this now can work together, which is incredibly important.
The power of community, like the power of a sense of community is really strong. And I would challenge anybody who says that communities can't create change just through their passion for something.
That probably was its greatest success, that it showed that there was potential of any number of things being proposed or wanting support.
The success has been to be able to use this funding model fairly, I think.
How will One Kilburn Community Fund know that these 5 projects in particular were successful?
Well, I mean, they're small grants, Haney. You're not going to do a lot of outcome assessment, and that you'd be wrong to do that. So the answer is they're not. It'll be qualitative, certainly not quantitative. There's no point in that. But Kilburn Oasis has already been a huge success.
The outcomes have to be about empowerment of the individual, empowerment of the community. If I can see that someone has had an idea and found the support to deliver it and to make it happen, then I feel encouraged to do it.
So the evaluation is not just about X number of people doing this or attending a meeting. The evaluation is qualitative in some ways. And given that these projects, one way or the other, involve local people, part of the success measures is, in a sense, what the participants feel, what they have got out of it as well.
So we need those conversations backwards and forwards from everybody involved and people who are not involved as well. But to have a bit more formal analysis of it as well is in the pipeline.
Part of that structure has to include evaluative processes where, on an ongoing basis, we can actually evaluate whether what we're doing is worthwhile and whether it brings benefits.
We're still exploring these ideas, but by exploring these ideas, we can always look back and say, this is what we did, this is how we work together. All the time that people spend with One Kilburn is often through volunteering. So it's really important that we, as I said, we have this experience of being able to work together and this relationship with each other.
As it happens, a lot of time in these sort of community groups, the real challenge is to make it bigger and to make sure that we keep on putting a big effort in including new people. Well, people that hasn't been working within the group before. Haley, we made it.
Yes, thank you.
No, thank you. Yeah, sure. Yeah. So what are you doing next?